The sentence of exile, the judgment. Hall, the stellar tribunal floated. The darkness music between galaxies. Structure so massive it had its own gravitational field inside its main chamber. Representatives from 47 different civilizations gathered to decide the fate of humanity. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, with floating platforms arranged in concentric circles, each holding a different species in their preferred atmosphere and gravity. Commander Alina Tor stood alone at the center, her magnetic boots keeping her grounded on the platform designated for carbon-based life forms. She was a veteran of the expansion wars, her uniform bearing metals from conflicts most of these ancient beings had never even heard of. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes swept across the assembled judges with neither fear nor apology. The accusations begin. High Chancellor Vexthon spoke first. The insectoid being mandibles clicked together as its translator converted the sounds into galactic standard. The creature had ruled the Vex collective for 3,000 years, and its patience with younger species was legendary for being non-existent. The human species stands accused of 17 violations of the harmony protocols. Vexurange translator crackled. In just 200 years since first contact, your kind has colonized 412 worlds, many of them within territories claimed by established civilizations. You have developed weapons that destabilize subspace. You have refused to submit your military technologies for council inspection. Most grievously, you have rejected the population control mandates that all civilizations must follow. Alina listened without interrupting. She had heard these accusations before during the preliminary hearings. Each time she had offered explanations. Each time those explanations had been dismissed as excuses. The defense. When the chamber fell silent, Alina finally spoke. Her voice carried across the chamber through her own translator, steady and clear. You speak of violations, but you leave out critical context. Every world we colonized was either uninhabited or home to presentient life that we carefully preserved. We developed new weapons because the Korek raiders attacked our outer colonies, and the council refused to intervene. We rejected population control because those mandates would have condemned billions of our people to never being born, all to satisfy arbitrary limits set by species who reached the stars millions of years before us. A rumbling sound came from the platform holding the monolith. Speakers, beings of living stone who communicated through seismic vibrations. Through the translator, their words were heavy with ancient authority. The protocols exist for balance. The younger species always complain about restrictions, but they fail to understand the wisdom earned through. And your species reproduces too quickly. You expand too aggressively. You question everything instead of accepting the order that has maintained galactic peace for 1,000,000 years. Alina felt her jaw clench. She had spent 6 months preparing for this tribunal, studying galactic law and precedent, but she was beginning to realize that laws and evidence mattered less than something far older and more stubborn. Fear, the true reason. Ambassador Elwysandra of the Crystalline Communion finally spoke the truth that everyone else danced around. The being existed as pure energy contained within a lattice of exotic matter, and when it spoke, its words rang like bells. Let us be honest. About what concerns this council. In 200 years, humanity has achieved what takes most species 10,000. Your technology advances at a rate we cannot predict. Your population grows despite our mandates. Your military defeats enemies who have terrorized the galaxy for millennia. You do not fit into the order we have maintained. You cannot be controlled through the usual methods, and that terrifies us. The chamber erupted in protest from various delegates, but Alwissendra continued undeterred. This tribunal is not about justice, it is about fear. We fear what humanity might become if given another 200 years, another 1,000, so we choose exile over coexistence. Elena stared at the crystalline being, surprised to find an ally in such an unexpected place, but Eliza Sassendra's honesty changed nothing. The votes had been cast before this hearing even began. The verdict. High Chancellor Vex Thuron raised 3 of its 6 limbs for silence. The chamber quieted instantly. The stellar tribunal has reached its decision. The human species is hereby exiled from all territories governed by the Galactic Council. You have 100 standard cycles to evacuate every human presence from Council space. This includes all colonies, space stations, research outposts, and vessels. After this deadline, any human detected within Council territories will be destroyed. Without warning, Elena felt the words like physical blows, but she kept her expression neutral. Behind her, she could feel the presence of her aide, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, who had accompanied her to the tribunal. She knew he was struggling to maintain his composure. You are exiling 35 billion people, Elena said quietly. Where exactly do you expect us to go? Vex Thuron's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The forbidden sectors remain unclaimed. That region of space has been declared too dangerous for colonization. But if humanity is as capable as you claim, perhaps you survive there. The forbidden sectors. Elena had studied the available data during her preparation. It was a massive region of space at the galaxy's edge, filled with spatial anomalies, gravitational whirlpools, and phenomena that had destroyed every probe sent to investigate. It was also rumored to contain ruins of ancient civilizations that had vanished long before any current species had achieved space flight. The last words. Elena took a deep breath. She had one final statement prepared, and she delivered it with all the conviction she could summon. This council has made its choice. You exile us not because we broke your laws, but because we refuse to stop growing. You punish us not for what we have done, but for what you fear we might become. Very well, humanity accepts your judgment. She paused, making sure every being in the chamber was listening. But understand this, you are not sending us away to die. You are giving us freedom from your restrictions, your mandates, your ancient fears. In the forbidden sectors, we will have no councils to answer to, no protocols to follow except our own. We will grow, we will adapt, we will build something new. Elena's voice grew harder, colder. And when we return, and we will return, this council will discover what humanity can truly achieve. When we are no longer held back by those who stopped reaching for greatness a million years ago. The chamber remained silent. Some of the delegates looked shocked, others seemed angry, a few like Elsandra appeared almost approving. Vexurin spoke one final time. 100 cycles, Commander Tors, not one day. Elena turned and walked toward the exit, her magnetic boots clicking against the platform with each step. Lieutenant Webb fell in beside her, and together they left the tribunal behind. The beginning of the journey, the transport ship that carried them back to the human fleet was small and cramped compared to the massive vessels of the elder species, but it was theirs, built with human hands and human ingenuity. As they approached the fleet, Elena stared out the viewport at the assembled ships. There were thousands of them, from massive colony vessels the size of small cities to military dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Each one carried families, equipment, hope, and fear in equal measure. Marcus finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. 35 billion people. Commander, how do we move an entire civilization in 100 cycles? Elena continued staring at the fleet, her mind already racing ahead to the challenges they would face. We do what humans have always done, Marcus. We adapt, we innovate, we survive. She turned to face him, and her expression was fierce with determination. The council thinks they're getting rid of a problem. They have no idea what they've just created. They're not exiling humanity, they're unleashing us. The transport ship docked with the flagship, a massive vessel named Prometheus that would lead the Exodus fleet. As Elena made her way to the bridge, she began issuing orders. Every department head would need to be briefed, supply chains would need to be organized, routes would need to be plotted through the most dangerous region of known space. 100 cycles. It seemed impossible, but humanity had achieved the impossible before. The forbidden sectors waited in the darkness ahead, filled with dangers and mysteries that had destroyed civilizations far older than humanity, but they also represented something the human race had never truly had before. Freedom, rise of the eternal empire into the abyss. The Exodus fleet moved through space like a river of light cutting through darkness. Admiral Marcus Ka stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, now promoted to lead the entire military escort. Beside him, Director Elena Torres, elevated to Supreme Commander of the human Exodus, watched the sensor displays with growing concern. 50 cycles had passed since they left council space. The fleet had maintained formation through the transition zones, those buffer regions between civilized space and the unknown. But now they approached the boundary of the forbidden sectors, and the readings were unlike anything human science had encountered. The gravitational readings are impossible, Lieutenant Sarah Chin reported from her station. We're detecting spatial distortions that shouldn't exist according to known physics. Some areas show time running faster, others slower, and there are energy signatures that don't match any known source. Elena studied the data flowing across the holographic displays. The forbidden sectors earned their name. Every probe they had sent ahead had either been destroyed or had transmitted data so strange it seemed like equipment malfunction, but they had no choice. Behind them, council space was closed forever. Ahead lay only mystery and danger. All ships maintained defensive formations. She ordered science vessels to the center of the fleet, military ships on the perimeter, and keep all children in the interior compartments until we know what we're dealing with. The fleet pushed forward, crossing an invisible boundary where council space ended and the forbidden sectors began. For several hours nothing seemed different. Then the sensors began screaming warnings. The Discovery Commander, we're detecting a structure. Ahead, Chin called out. Her voice carried a note of awe. It's massive. Larger than anything we've ever built. And it's old, the decay pattern suggests. It's been here for at least 50 million years. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Show me. The main view screen shifted, magnifying the image ahead. What appeared was breathtaking and terrifying. In equal measure, a ring structure hung in space so large that Earth could have fit through its center 100 times over. The surface was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched, as if the structure itself was alive. Are there any energy readings? Marcus asked, moving closer to the tactical display. That's the strain part, Searchin replied. The structure is putting out more energy than our entire fleet combined, but it's not doing anything with it, just there, waiting. Elena made a decision that would change humanity's fate forever. Prepare a science team. We're going to investigate and have the military ready to extract them at the first sign of danger. The ancient technology. Dr. James Morrison led the exploration team into the alien structure. The xenorchiologist had spent his entire career studying dead civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for what he found inside the ring. The interior was a vast network of chambers and corridors, all perfectly preserved. Despite the eons that had passed, the walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move and rearrange themselves, as if trying to communicate. And at the heart of the structure they found something that defied explanation. Chamber filled with crystalline matrices, each one containing what appeared to be compressed information, billions upon billions of data points stored in a format that human technology could barely begin to understand. And surrounding these matrices were machines still functional after 50 million years. It's a library, Morrison breathed into his comm unit. The entire structure is a repository of knowledge. Whoever built this stored everything they knew before they disappeared. Can we access it? Elena's voice crackled through the comm. Morrison approached one of the machines, his hands shaking with excitement and fear. The interface was alien, but there were patterns he recognized. Mathematics was universal. After all, he began touching the controls and the machine responded. The chambers suddenly blazed with light. Information poured out of the matrices, flooding into the machines around them. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing star charts, equations, schematics for technologies that seemed like magic. And then the machine spoke, its voice translated by some mechanism Morrison didn't understand. Welcome, children of Soul, we knew you would come. We left this for you, the legacy of the architects. Over the following cycles, humanity began to understand what they had discovered. The structure had been built by a species called the architects, beings who had risen to godlike power before mysteriously vanishing. They had left behind not just one library, but hundreds scattered throughout the forbidden sectors, and they had left them specifically for whoever would be brave or desperate enough to venture into this dangerous region. The knowledge contained in those libraries was staggering. Technologies that could manipulate space and time, methods for extracting energy directly from the fabric of reality, biological enhancements that could extend life indefinitely, weapons that could reshape matter at the quantum level, and most importantly, the ability to create artificial wormholes, allowing instantaneous travel across any distance, but the architects had left a warning as well inscribed in every library they created: power without wisdom leads to destruction. We achieved everything, and in doing so lost what made us worth saving. Learn from our mistakes, grow not just in strength but in understanding. Alina stood in the main library, now converted into humanity's primary research facility. Around her, thousands of scientists worked to decode and implement the architect technology. They had made incredible progress in just 20 cycles. Dr. Morrison approached his appearance, transformed by the biological enhancements he had voluntarily tested. He looked younger, healthier, his eyes bright with the knowledge he had absorbed. Supreme Commander, we've made a breakthrough with the wormhole technology. We can create stable passages through space. We could spread throughout this entire sector in a fraction of the time we originally projected. Alina nodded slowly. The possibilities were intoxicating. With this technology, humanity could build an empire that spanned the galaxy. They could become powerful enough that no council would ever threaten them again. But the architect's warning echoed her mind: power without wisdom leads to destruction. The new humanity. 30 cycles passed. The human colonies in the forbidden sectors grew and prospered beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Using architect technology, they terraformed worlds in days instead of decades. They built cities that floated in space, sustained by energy drawn from dimensional pockets. They enhance themselves not just physically but mentally, expanding their consciousness to comprehend concepts that would have been impossible before. But Alina insisted that every colonist undergo extensive education in philosophy, ethics, and history before receiving enhancements. She created councils of wisdom, groups dedicated to ensuring that humanity's rapid growth did not corrupt them. She established laws that prevented any individual or group from accumulating too much power. The human civilization that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were stronger, yes, more advanced, certainly, but they were also more thoughtful, more careful about the consequences of their actions. The architect's warning had been taken to heart. Marcus, now Admiral Supreme of the Human Defense Forces, oversaw the construction of a fleet that incorporated architect technology. The ships were smaller than the old Exodus vessels, but infinitely more powerful. They could cross the galaxy in moments, phase through solid matter, and defend against attacks that would have vaporized the old fleet. But the most important development was something unexpected. Human scientists discovered that the architects had not actually died or disappeared. They had transcended, evolving beyond physical form into beings of pure consciousness. And they had left their libraries as a test for younger species. Those who found the knowledge and used it wisely would follow in the architects' footsteps. Those who used it foolishly would destroy themselves. Humanity was passing the test. The return, 150 cycles after the exile, a single human ship appeared at the edge of council space. It was small, sleek, and radiated power in ways that made every sensor in the region scream warnings. High Chancellor Vex Thuron, now ancient even by his species standards, received the transmission personally. The face that appeared on the view screen was human, but transformed. Commander Alina Torres, now called the Eternal Shepherd, looked exactly as she had 150 cycles ago, but her eyes held wisdom accumulated over decades of rapid learning. Chancellor Vex Thuron, Elena's voice was calm, neither angry nor threatening. Humanity has returned not to conquer but to rejoin the galactic community. We wish to share what we have learned and help guide the younger species as the architects once guided us. The council convened an emergency session. Fear rippled through the chambers. The reports they had received from the forbidden sectors were fragmentary, but alarming. Humanity had not just survived, they had thrived in ways that seemed impossible. But when Elena presented herself before the council, she brought gifts instead of weapons, medical technologies that could cure diseases that had plagued species for millennia, agricultural methods that could end hunger, educational systems that could uplift prosentient species peacefully, and most importantly, she brought an offer. We do not seek revenge for the exile. We understand now that it was necessary. You were right to fear what we might become if we remained among you, growing without guidance or restraint. The forbidden sectors taught us what we needed to learn. They taught us wisdom to match our ambition. Elena's image was projected throughout the chamber so all could see her clearly. The architects left their legacy for whoever would claim it. Humanity has claimed it and passed their test. Now we extend an offer to every species in this council. Join us not as subjects but as partners. Together we can build an empire not of domination but of enlightenment, an empire whose power stretches not just across space but across time itself, preserving knowledge and wisdom for the species that will come after us. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Elwysandra of the crystalline communion, who had lived through the original exile, spoke first. What you offer sounds beautiful, but how can we trust that humanity has truly changed? Power corrupts, and you have gained power beyond measure. Elena smiled, and it was a genuine expression of warmth. Come and see, send delegations to our worlds. Study our civilization, meet our people. We hide nothing because we have nothing to hide. Judge for yourselves whether we have earned the right to return. Over the following cycles, delegations from every council species visited the human territories in the forbidden sectors. What they found astounded them: cities of crystal and light, populations that worked not for survival but for growth and understanding, technologies that seemed like miracles but were used with careful restraint, and humans who had been enhanced beyond their original limitations but who remained fundamentally human in their compassion and curiosity. Slowly species began to accept humanity's offer. The council itself transformed, evolving from a ruling body into a cooperative alliance. And at its heart stood humanity, not as masters but as guides, sharing the gifts the architects had left behind. The Eternal Empire. 200 cycles after the exile, the human empire stretched across the entire galaxy, but it was an empire unlike any other in history. There were no subjects, only partners; no conquered territories, only willing colonies; no forced assimilation, only voluntary growth. Elena Torres, now truly eternal through technologies that had defeated aging and death itself, stood on a platform overlooking Earth. The cradle of humanity had been transformed, enhanced with architect technology while preserving its natural beauty. Below her, billions of humans and aliens lived together learning from each other. Marcus appeared beside her, also preserved by the same technologies. He had become her closest advisor, her conscience when power threatened to overwhelm wisdom. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. The exile, I mean all the suffering it caused. Elena considered the question carefully. Every day, the people who died during the Exodus, the worlds we lost, the pain we endured, but I also understand that without the exile, we would never have become what we are now. We would have remained ambitious children, growing powerful without growing wise. She turned to face him. The council was right to fear us. We were dangerous not because we were evil, but because we were reckless. The exile forced us to confront our own nature and choose what we wanted to become, and we chose wisdom. Marcus nodded slowly. The architects would be proud. Elena looked up at the stars, visible even in daylight through Earth's enhanced atmosphere. Out there in the forbidden sectors, the library still waited. Other species would eventually venture into that dangerous region. They too would face the architect's test. Our responsibility now is to help them pass it, she said softly, to guide without controlling, to share without demanding, to lead without dominating. That's the true measure of power, not how much you can take, but how much you can give. Eternal Empire continued to grow, but always with purpose and restraint. Humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. True power came not from conquering the galaxy, but from understanding it, not from ruling over others, but from helping them rise. The council that had once exiled humanity now looked to them for guidance, and humanity, remembering their own painful journey, guided with gentle hands and patient hearts. In the darkness between stars, the architect libraries waited for the next species brave enough to seek them, and when they did, humanity would be there, ready to help them pass the test, ready to help them understand that power without wisdom was worthless. But power combined with compassion could reshape reality itself. The empire humanity built stretched not just across space, but across time, preserving knowledge for civilizations yet unborn. And at its foundation was the memory of Exiled, the lesson learned in the forbidden sectors, and the choice to use power not for domination, but for enlightenment. Humanity had been cast out, but they had risen. And in rising, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before, something eternal,